Well, rail union leaders have warned MPs there's still a lot left to talk about if further strike action is to be avoided. Mick Whelan knows all about it. He's the General Secretary of the Aslef Union. Hi, it's good to see you. Thanks for joining us. I was listening to you with interest yesterday when you were speaking to a committee of MPs and you told them we're further away than we started from a deal. How can that be?
Well, we negotiate in good faith. You might not like our responses and none of us want to be in the position that we're in. But I found myself last week where a deal was announced in the press on a Friday afternoon, late on a Friday afternoon, that contained many things that were our red lines we'd already said no to, many things we hadn't discussed, and basically would destroyed our ability to actually eradicate every agreement we've made in the last 140 years, locally and nationally, with no right to renegotiate. No trade union is going to give up the ability to speak on behalf of its members.
Are there plans for new talks?
What's going to happen next is, and the industry know this, they've been dealing with this in the privatised sector for two and a half decades, that any deal has to go to my board, my executive committee. I naturally won't be recommending. They will make the decision. And depending on what they decide, will dictate whether we go back into that format of talks again or what we do in future.
Train drivers earn a lot of money, 60 grand. The offer, we're told, from the Rail Delivery Group, describe it as a landmark outline proposal. It would give you 8% over 2 years, which would mean that pay would go up to about £65,000. Is that not enough?
It's not quite true. The trouble is, it's average salaries for train drivers.
So some of them earn more than that?
Some in inter-city companies, some earn more, and in many areas they earn significantly less. But the reality of the deal was that it was 14% RPI last year. We're currently running something similar this year. We haven't had a pay rise for 4 years. In effect, it was a 20% pay cut for giving up every term and condition we've got, which had been incredibly unfair. And the value of the deal would have been hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds in productivity that, you know, the deal itself doesn't make any economic sense in any way, shape or form.
But you must appreciate that when we're seeing that 3 million people have run out on the prepay meters and don't have any heat, and then we're looking at train drivers who earn, some of them, over £65,000, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And neither you or I, because I've watched you quite often do the politics of envy, you know, what we've got, we've paid for in flexibility and productivity down the years. People doing 11-hour turns with bare 20-minute breaks, 5.5 hours, 6 hours in the seat. Many people still driving traction that is 29, 40 years old with no toilet facilities. The modern railway isn't quite as people imagine it when you see a nice, shiny intercity train going from A to B.
How much involvement do you think the government has in the negotiations behind the scenes?
Well, that's part of the problem. We don't actually work for the government. We don't work for the DfT or the Treasury. I've got 15 strikes on and 15 talks. So we're employed by everybody from Abellio to First Group to Trentalia to Advanti to whoever else. But the people that we work for have done a contractual deal with the government limiting their ability to give us a pay rise. Now, we have free collective bargaining. Now, the value of whatever you want to sell or buy is precluded by what you're allowed to talk about. So part of this dispute arose from the fact that when we went to talk to our employers, they said, we can't talk to you. Then we went to the government, they said, no, you've got to talk to your employers. So we had months of being messed around, pushed from pillar to post, before we balloted for strike action.
Do you find that this Transport Secretary is more willing to discuss with you?
I've met with him once, I found him incredibly personable, although apparently in the Daily Mail they found me unpleasant.
Were you unpleasant?
I hope not.
I don't find you unpleasant.
And, you know, I'm willing to talk to anybody. We don't want to be on strike. We don't want to be losing money. We want a resolution, but it has to be a fair resolution. So
what is it that you want? What are the main sticking points for you guys?
Well, having had no pay offer for 4 years and all of a sudden getting one that's so untenable it's frightening, I want somebody to come to the table, unrelease the shackles, talk to us properly about the true value, about what they want delivered, how they want delivered it. And if everybody thinks that we can just, because of the current crisis, give up everything we've ever had for nothing, it doesn't work that way.
How worried are you, though, that your members, train drivers, will become almost like dinosaurs? It does look as though trains are becoming more and more, into the future, driverless trains.
Well, actually, most of the Victorian infrastructure can't sustain driverless trains. It's a distraction. Before the pandemic, we were actually looking at
HS2 is looking for driverless technology, though, isn't it?
Sorry?
HS2 will be...
HS2, but it's purpose-built. Most trains run on Victorian infrastructure with wonderful stations with palisades and nice pylons in the way and more furniture that we can't see anything. Also, DOO wasn't designed for 13-car trains with 1,300 people, one person on there. That's our biggest problem is society. We've got train drivers and rail staff afraid to go around parts of our network at certain times, day or night. Prior to the pandemic, sexual assaults in our railways have gone up 180%. We had county lines with drugs, people with knives and acid. The reality is the society we live in, when you talk to passengers what they want a cheaper, safer, but they want a visible presence on platforms, in booking offices, on trains. And you can't have the situation where the only person on the railway is a train driver.
Are we looking at more strikes?
I believe so.
When?
Don't know. As I said, we meet next week to discuss I'll call it a non-offer, and determine... There's a lot of anger out there. I'm being inundated, both on social media and in my inbox by train drivers. How dare you talk about these things that we have rejected. So my board is 8 train drivers. I imagine there'll be an equal amount of passion next week.
And so you will continue to strike unless you get the deal, and it doesn't look as though you're going to get what you're looking for at this stage. The government, though, is bringing in legislation which means that you'll be breaking the law if you strike.
Interesting. What price democracy? We might have another debate another day between the Lobby and Transparency Bill, the Protest Bill, the Trade Union Bill 2016, which we're currently challenging in the courts, and the latest Trade Union Bill, and this latest legislation. Any form of indenture where people can't withdraw their labour and can't have a voice, naturally we'll oppose. I imagine the whole trade union movement will do it. We are moving in a direction as a society that does frighten me.
Do you think a way through this would be to have, because there's more and more unions striking, their members are striking, a day of national strike, a general strike?
We have to be very, very careful. We're allowed to do coordinated action, and the real problem is so many people have to jump through so many different hoops or in such different places. How you coordinate the action when you have to give different notice periods and what you have to do to comply with the legislation. You've got to be very, very careful not to take secondary action where you could be sued. And also, most trade unions are out there looking to do the best for their members. At a point in time, I look at the health service, and my wife worked in the health service for 48 years, and nobody wants to be out on strike, and those people deserve a massive pay rise. But
there is a day of action, national action, planned for the 1st of February by the TUC. Do you think that would be viewed as a general strike?
I think it'd be termed as a general strike. But from what I know from the discussion that took place, an awful lot of trade unions are still balloting, won't be in a place to give the appropriate notice, so it won't be a general strike per se. And your members won't take part in that on the 1st of February? Again, I won't know until Monday when I meet with my board and what we're going to do. But it's getting tight then. Is there 2 weeks' notice you have to give? We give 14 days' notice, but we can do anything 14 days from Monday. OK. It's good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining. I don't find you unpleasant at all. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.